All right, video time. Showbiz it is.
We are proud to announce that all Blackhawk games next year will be televised.
You're going to be very proud of the direction that we're headed.
They scored! It's in! They scored! It's in! The Hawks win the Stanley Cup!
Welcome to the banner-raising ceremony for your 2010 Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks.
Hawks wins their 17th game to start the regular season with a point that's a new NHL record.
The business we've gotten from the United Center has been just unbelievable.
United Center is huge, you know, from the Blackhawks to the Bulls to the concerts, you know, I mean, it generates a lot of business for the local bars on Madison, to Carmichael's, you know, without that, you know, that's about 25% of our gross sales per year.
You've seen an economic engine that has really been facilitated by the success of the various occupants within.
83 years we've been in business. Same location. Added on over the years.
Yeah.
But thanks to the Blackhawks and the Bulls, we've been able to add on.
You know, we're doing probably 200 to 220 people, you know, within an hour and a half to 2 hours before the hockey game.
When it's a Blackhawks game, it is just like a rush.
You know, when there's games, I go
Yeah.
with a full crew. I even add on a couple guys in the kitchen and a couple extra people on the floor and a couple busboys.
It's been great for the staff, great energy inside here. Everyone's excited, everybody's happy.
People are willing to get on that bandwagon, and they've stayed there.
It's a partnership, you know, I mean, we're grateful for what they do, and their success is our success. It's a win-win for everybody in the area.
Our first speaker today is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Blackhawks, John McDonough. His top ally in keeping the Blackhawks on top is the President of the Wirtz Corporation and Chairman of the Chicago Blackhawks, Rocky Wirtz. Their goal is simple: win the Stanley Cup every year, just like 2010. Together, they have, number one, rebuilt the front office. Number two, earned new and high-profile sponsorships.
You're going to say a few words.
And number three,
Okay.
started televising home games. Forbes magazine called the Chicago Blackhawks, and I quote, the greatest sports business turnaround ever. Ladies and gentlemen, John McDonough and Rocky Wirtz. Gentlemen.
Okay, Mr. McDonough, a couple of minutes for opening comments.
Thank you, Jay. Paul, I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to be here today. When you go to these events with Rocky, my role really is nothing more than a glorified caddy.
Don't believe everything you hear.
But it's been a very rewarding 5.5 years. We feel as if the organization has made a lot of progress, and that's really what we take a look at. The timing, however, is fortuitous for us to be 24-2-3. When we accepted this, we really didn't know what our record would be. But my job is really, I am the director of goals allowed and penalties, and Rocky is senior vice president of wins. But we feel very fortunate. We've built a great organization on and off the ice. It's been a painstaking process. Starting in November of 2007, I had to make a pretty difficult decision to leave the position as president of the Chicago Cubs And the factor that really swayed in the favor of the Blackhawks was Rocky Wirtz. There were certainly a lot of things he alleviated. He forgot to tell me before I accepted the job, but it was the best professional decision I've ever made. Primarily, I have the ability to work with Rocky on day in, day out basis. But for our fan base, I'm really excited that they feel, as we do, is that there's a resurgence, that there's something different that's percolating at the United Center. We have an unwavering commitment to be a gold standard organization, not only for the city of Chicago and not only for the National Hockey League, but for all of professional sports. That is what the city of Chicago deserves. And to see the job that Stan Bowman has done on the hockey operations side, along with Joel Quinville and Al McIsaac and Norm McIver, and the job that Jay Blunk and Chris Warner and all of the people on the business side have done in collaboration. We work together. There is one language spoken at the United Center. It's not the hockey side. It's not the business operation. We work together. We share a lot of confidences, and it's that collaboration, I think, and understanding and respect and trust that has ascended us to this position. But I will close with this. We are not entitled. It is a very, very hungry group on and off the ice. We are not entitled to one more win. We are not entitled to one more viewer. We are not entitled to one more listener or one more fan to walk into that building. Every day is different, and we are in the earn it business. So that is kind of the direction that we go every day. Thank you.
Rocky, before we get you, we have one question for John, and it's a question that I'm just going to add a little bit too. For some of you chronologically challenged in this audience, you may remember the old Chicago Stadium. You may remember the second balcony. And I to quote my father, dressing up there was wearing a clean white T-shirt. This was the kind of crowd that you had to be very careful of. Now, Mr. McDonough, you seem to be drawing a whole bunch of families, young people. What's going on? Has there been a sea change? Where are all those people gone? And now you have all new people coming. What's going on?
At around 7:35 every night, just before the game in the 300 level, Paul, we play Kumbaya.
There it is.
I think it's more civilized up in the 300 level. I think the fans are in a pretty good mood. I spent a lot of my life in the balcony at the old Chicago Stadium. I was one of the few that did not get thrown out, but I think our fan base is well behaved. They're very engaged. It's a very young demographic. About 70% of our fans are new. The other 30% gave us a second chance, but they come because they're very engaged with that Chicago Blackhawks team.
Very good answer, and I think non-smoking, because by the third period, you remember you couldn't see the ice with all the smoke. Okay, Rocky, you're on. Opening comment?
Yeah, thank you, John and Jay, and obviously City Club. Thank you for having John and I here today. We'd be remiss without talking about the lockout. And obviously, as John said, we've gotten off to a fantastic start. But the lockout was something that had to happen. And it had to happen because our collective bargaining agreement had run out. So some people had said, well, why didn't you just, two of you, just being the players and the owners, just get in a room and figure it out? And if any of you have ever gone through collective bargaining, it sounds easy, but it's hard to do. So you got to get in a room, but you have to assume that you're both in the same place. And the owners and the players were not in that same place. So it's a process you got to go through. As painstaking as it may be, as hard as it is for the fans to stomach, and it's something that we certainly understand. Because essentially, we might have the stock certificates that say we own the Blackhawks, but you people, you fans, everyone in this room, you own the Blackhawks. All we do is rent them. And if you look at it that way, that's something it's public. It's something that when you collectively bargaining in the public, it's very tough. So when generally collective bargaining doesn't affect any of us unless all of a sudden our garbage is not picked up, or you're worried about city services or things that are important to us. Well, obviously hockey and sports are important to all of us. So this was something that we had to go through. Now, we as a Blackhawk organization, John and I and Jay and the rest of the organization realized that this could be a long lockout, and it possibly could be for the year. So economically, we had to prepare ourselves for what are we going to do, how are we going to raise money to cover our cost, because there's other things that go on. You still have development. You know, we still have young players in Rockford. We still have hockey staff. We still have a front office. And we had to ask ourselves a question, are we going to lay anybody off? And the collective answer between John and ourselves is absolutely not. We spent 5.5 years building this organization. Why do we, with a flick of the big pen, all of a sudden decimate our organization by laying people off? And even if it's only 10%, I know personally I can't make 10% less and live on what I live on. How do we ask our employees to do that too and come back and actually be engaged in their job? So we made a very hard decision, but one I'm happy we made because we knew this too would end. And when it ended, we were going to hit the ground running. Now, hindsight's 40-40, and we're sitting here with only, a few losses in regulation. But the way the organization has responded both on the ice and off the ice is part of why you see the Sports Illustrated talk about the resurgence and what it's done for hockey. So what it's going through is, the nice thing about this is that we have 10 years of labor rest. There's an opt-out period after 8. But for all practical purposes, we believe it's going to go for 10 years. And what do we learn in this process? What we learned as owners is we have to do a better job with our players to help educate them during the term of this contract and not let it get to the 8th or 9th year and 10th year to say, oh, by the way, we have all these things that we forgot to bring up in years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so and so. So we're going to have committees, both for the owners and players. It's something we used to do back before when we had labor, really better labor peace. And the nice thing about this new contract is it's both 50-50. We share, in hockey you have a hard cap. And it's divided by design revenues. And both the players share in that and the owners share in that. So the players can't do any better by the owners doing any worse or vice versa. So it's something that's very, very important to us as we grow this sport. Before 7 years ago, the sport was $2 billion in gross sales. At the beginning of the lockout, it was $3.3 billion. And there's no reason we can't even grow that even more. Obviously, we've been very, very humbled and blessed by the string that we had, and that's on the hockey operations and what Joel Quinville has done and his hockey staff and his coaches have done something that no other team obviously in the league was able to do, because when you start, we had 10 of the first 12 games on the road. And that is a very tough thing just to start. We didn't have a training camp. Our first game was in L.A., so if we did, it was a couple-day training camp. We even cut that short because we had to travel out to L.A. for the banner raising for the L.A. Kings. But how Joel has masterfully given days off, and then how he's put in the schedule as far as practices, he's done a terrific job, and that's something that he can have. Now, we talk about the business of sports. We want to, as John said, we want to be the gold standard, not of just hockey, but any sport. And that was the vision that John and I both had from the first time we met, is how can we do this? And now, mind you, when we said that back in 2007, people think we were drinking at the time, but I promise you all we had was Diet Coke. And so, we want to be, obviously, the gold standard. So if from any one person outside would say, well, we're probably in the top 5 as far as the organization, how it is. And, John, and rightfully so, would say we're number 1. But even if we have a doubting Thomas out there, you're in the top 5. Our ticket prices are in about the 12th and 13th position. There's 30 teams in the league. Now, we started this process off in 2007. We're 29th out of 30th. Now, we understand we have a non-elastic product, and we got to be very, very careful in raising prices. But it's something that we have to do, and we look at it every year, and Chris Werner shakes his head. His hair was white when he started working for the Hawks. He had coal black hair. And Chris, raise your hand so they know who you are. So if anyone has any ticket questions and want to know why I'm number 48th on the waiting list, and really are there 300 or there 400 or 14,000, don't listen to Chris, but he'll tell you the truth. But it's something we look at every day. And again, what we do is the new collective bargaining agreement is one of the things we want to do in all 30 teams have to be profitable. Because unlike other businesses, you can't play yourself. So we want all 30 teams to be profitable. If the teams are profitable, we can reinvest in the money. We can do stuff that, quite frankly, that many teams that lose money aren't going to do. And it's more than just the players. It's how do these players get there? How does Stan Bowman and his hockey operations be able to draft these young players but then develop them? And now we have people that do nothing else that develop these young players even before the Hawks sign them at 18, 19, and 20 when they're in college and or in the juniors, that we work with them even before we turn them pro. All this takes money, and it's important to do it. So as John said, we have an obligation to you in this room and to our fans and to the city of Chicago to be relevant every year. And you have our commitment for doing that. The other thing is, when you read in magazines like Forbes, they talk about what is your hockey team worth? I don't know what it's worth, but it really doesn't matter. I'm the third generation of Wirtz in the business. My kids are the fourth. And this is something that doesn't matter what it's worth. What matters is we're not going to sell it. But what does matter is how we can be competitive every year. And we are going to try to win the Stanley Cup every year, but we know we can't do that. That doesn't mean that we can't be in a position to win it every year. So that you have our commitment and in what we're going to do. Now, we talk about the business in sports and what it's like. Now, we have other costs involved, too. Most people don't realize that there's a city and there's a county tax that goes in as 12% off the top. For your business ladies and men in this room, if you took 12% off your business before you even open your doors, I tell you, it's very difficult to get any kind of bottom line. So anyway, those are the things that we have, and those are just the challenges. But the important thing is that we are closing the gap, and we're getting much better. Now, in closing, I'd be remiss to be here and not haven't asked for everyone at the City Club. At each of your tables, we have something. It's our annual statement of Blackhawk Charities. And my daughter, Elizabeth, Lizzie, stand up. Heads this up, and she's having started the junior board, and they're having their first function on Saturday at the Paris Club. I think there's a little card in there. But if you have your email address, make it very easy for you to give money. Even if you can't come, please give money. Give Lizzie your email address, and she's happy to accommodate you, and you'll get a receipt momentarily. So thank you, and thank you for having us.
I don't know where City Club E is, but Tweed, City Club E, walk around the room, and know it's going to be tough. Maybe someone's a question. But Rocky, I have a question because the Tribune broke the story this morning about the Paul and et cetera, where they're going, and your ideas on expanding of the United Center. Why don't you touch on that and what your position is?
I didn't think you were going to ask that question, but in the highly unlikely...
This is the City Club. We don't hold back.
Timing is wonderful. Well, we talked about... It's really a two-part question.
Okay.
The Bulls are currently building their practice facility. The mayor came to Jerry Reinsdorf and asked him, he'd liked they're in Deerfield previously. He said, I think it would be terrific for the city and for the Bulls to move your practice facility into the city. And Jerry acquiesced, and in the process of planning that, across the street, on Wood Street, I believe it's about a $22 million venture. So that's in the process. As far as expansion, we'd like to do it. It's a plan, but nothing is set in stone. And so let's go back again, a quick, back. Where the building is 19 years old, but 20 years ago, when my dad, Bill, and Jerry Reinsdorf were going to build the United Center, we couldn't even find a U.S. bank to underwrite this venture. Any consortium of banks to underwrite this venture, including our Chicago banks at all, no one wanted to touch a sports facility. But what they kept asking us is, give us some certainty and help us understand property taxes in Cook County. So we went to the legislature. You laugh. It's not a difficult process. You just hold up a piece of paper and just pay whatever you pay, right? Whatever the good assessor tells us, of course, that's what you do. But we asked the legislature for a formula because and the assessor uses other like buildings. We believe the United Center is a unique building. There's nothing else. If you have a home, we can say the home down the street, the next block over is very much similar. If you have an office building, you have a commercial property, those we can come into. But when it comes to United Center, we have a very unique property. So it's very hard for the assessor to take his manual and be able to rate that. So we have a floor and we have a ceiling. The floor works out, but certainly the important thing is we pay taxes every year. And so that is in the process of, if we want to build this expansion, we're going to ask to work with the powers that may be for some kind of formula to be able to do it. Because what we don't want to do is to build a building uncapped without knowing what the future is, because for the United Center, for this expansion to be over $100 million, privately financed, we're not asking the government for anything. All we're asking them for is give us the same kind of formula. We'll work with you in any way we can if we want to build that expansion on the east side.
Good answer. Okay, now we have 4 questions. And Mr. McDonough, it's obviously your fault. 3 out of the 4 questions deal with the Cubs. Hey, listen, I don't blame the mess. I'm reading we got Mark Weiermiller, who's always first, Tom Leahy, and Brian Bernardoni. And they all want to know, can the Cubs win this year? And I just think, in this crowd, who cares? Next. And just because they're also on WGN radio and WGN television, this is a profile in courage. All right, now an actual question on the Blackhawks from Glenn Mazzotti. Is that close? Mazade? Close enough. Please discuss Patrick Kane's improvement on ice, on offense and defense, and off ice as well. What does it mean to the team? You're at the City Club. This is not the Economic Club, Rocky. I'm sorry.
Can we go back to the Cubs question? I'm very proud of the progress that Patrick has made, especially off the ice. I think that there has been a maturation process. The issues that have taken place, they were addressed immediately. I think that patience is a gift. But we're watching, I think, the evolution of a young superstar. And it's very rewarding for us to watch this now. What you're seeing every night on the ice, Patrick Kane is a magician. Amazingly talented, has really taken to the city of Chicago. His family comes in for the majority of the games. We signed him a few years ago to a long-term contract, he and Jonathan Taves. And we certainly...
Excuse me, not a bad move.
Not a bad move. But, it has been a process with Patrick. But we've gone through it, and his performance is just amazing, and we're very, very proud that he's with us.
Okay. We have a couple of more City Club E? City Club E says we don't. Well, you could, if you want to yell out, breaking all City Club rules. As you know, we have strict rules here. Yes, stand up and say who you are and what's your question.
What are you doing to kind of, as you go into the season, you're playing like a game every, day and a half, 2 days, as opposed to 3.5 days. You're a little smaller than the other teams on your heels. What are you doing to try to balance that? Give some time off. At the end of the season, it's really going to come down to who's hurt, who has the healthiest lineup.
I think Rocky alluded to the job that Joel Quenneville has done. He really understands the importance of rest. In a conventional season, you're probably playing 2-3 games a week. Would that be right, Al? About 2-3 games a week. Now with the compressed season, the compressed schedule, and you're probably playing anywhere between 3 and 4 games a week. I know that we just went through a period where we played 7 games in 11 nights, and I think rest is very important. Not only days off, but ice time. So maybe your defensemen like Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith, they're not playing 28, 29 minutes a night because Nick Leddy and Michael Roosevelt are playing 16, 17 minutes a night. So they're taking some of that baggage off of them. So I think we talk about getting ready for that second season. I think 2 things. First of all, we certainly would like to be well rested. And second of all, if you're well rested, you have a pretty good chance to be healthy. And if you're healthy, you have a good chance, at least with the team with our skill level, you have a chance to make a deep run.
You also get, I think it's a credit to the conditioning of these players and what they came into camp in very good condition. Now, if you go down to the locker room after the game, they're going through a full workout. And it's not just on a stationary bike. They're going through, a whole rigorous routine. And when their heart rate's up, and so what you see is, when you saw like last night's game, that they could double shift Patrick Kane with the altitude. And he smiles at the coach and says, "Do you want to go in?" He said, "Of course I want to go in." But that's what you have. You have very well-conditioned players that are stretching and doing all the other things. I think you see other teams in town that many times lose those man hours that you can prevent just by proper training.
Ed Mazer has a question, but Ed, I hate to say this, you have to do it after this question. This happens to be from Chicago Police Department Superintendent Gary McCarthy. By the way, God, can't you love the City Club? Some guys, just so, of all the people, not to, does it say Superintendent McCarthy? Yes?
But it's not his handwriting.
That's not your handwriting.
All right. Well, Superintendent, if you haven't learned before, now you know. You're no longer in New York. Okay. Mr. Mazer to close.
This is for either Rocky or John. Teams like the White Sox and will open up on April 1, by the way. Last baseball team to win a championship in Chicago. The Cubs, the Bulls, etc. We read a lot about their activities in various communities, speakers going out, holding workshops and that. What do the Blackhawks do in terms of building those kinds of community relations?
Well, I think what you see on the table is one of them. Now, this Saturday event that I was talking that Lizzie's going to be hosting for the junior board, we're going to have the whole team there. As John said, we have a 99-day, schedule with 48 games. For them to come and to add both their presence and their money really says something. And each of these, what you don't see on the Hawks, you don't see them pounding their chest, you don't see them waiting for the cameras to show up. There's not an event that we can't ask them to that they wouldn't go and show up and do. And so I think that one of the things, the reason that we've been able to connect with our fans is they're part of the community. Most of them live in the city of Chicago. They're out there. They don't have an entourage. They don't have people doing stuff for them. They're just like anyone else, and they just want to be part of the community and give back. So we've been very, very blessed with how much, and there's plenty of, several of them have their own foundations just to do what you're talking about.
How about a big round of applause for these two gentlemen?